What if I told you that being liked is the fastest way to become powerless? That every time you try to please, to be accepted, to be understood, you give away control. Most people spend their lives chasing approval. They want to be liked at work, respected by peers, admired by strangers who barely know them. And for what? To feel safe, to feel validated, to feel relevant. But here's the truth Machiavelli knew. The man who needs to be liked is already a slave, because whoever gives you approval can take it away. That's why the powerful are never loved. They are feared, respected, envied, and sometimes despised. But they are never liked, because likable means safe, and safe men don't rule the world, they serve it. Machiavelli wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." But he didn't mean cruelty for its own sake. He meant clarity. He meant freedom. He meant that to lead, to win, to rise, you must first make peace with being hated. Because when you stop seeking approval, you become untouchable. You no longer adjust your truth to fit fragile ears. You no longer apologize for your ambition. You no longer fear being misunderstood because you understand yourself. And that kind of clarity terrifies people. So they will call you cold. They will call you arrogant. They will call you ruthless. But in the end, they will call you what matters most: effective. Every man faces the same decision: be liked and forgettable, or be feared and remembered. The crowd praises the one who comforts them, but follows the one who commands them. The world pretends to value kindness, but it secretly obeys confidence, certainty, and dominance. The ones who change history are never the ones who ask to be loved. By the end of this video, you'll understand why being hated is not a curse, it's proof of independence. You'll learn how to become immune to opinion, how to earn respect through distance, and how to turn hostility into influence. Because once you stop fearing hatred, every room becomes yours. Every conversation bends toward your gravity, and every person who once doubted you will feel it. That quiet, unshakable force of the man who no longer needs approval. Let's begin. The desire to be liked is the most subtle form of enslavement. It doesn't wear chains. It doesn't command you openly. It whispers. It tells you to soften your words, to shrink your presence, to apologize for your strength. It convinces you that peace is found in the approval of others. And before you realize it, you're no longer living by principle, you're performing for applause. Machiavelli saw this weakness destroy men more than any war or betrayal. He watched rulers crumble not because they were defeated, but because they wanted to be admired. They traded fear for affection. They confused love with loyalty. And when the people they tried to please turned against them, they discovered that admiration is the most fragile currency of all. The moment you start chasing approval, you stop commanding it. You become predictable, pliable, desperate to maintain the image others have of you. You lose the ability to say no. You stop making decisions based on truth and start making them based on perception. You sacrifice authority for acceptance and call it kindness. But here's the law. You cannot lead and be liked at the same time. You can either comfort people or command them, but never both. The one who comforts will always be liked in the moment and forgotten after. The one who commands will always be hated in the moment and remembered forever. Machiavelli wrote that men are ungrateful, fickle, false, cowardly, and covetous. He wasn't being cruel, he was being honest. He understood that affection is conditional, but power is permanent. To seek love is to put your survival in the hands of others. To seek respect is to keep it in your own. Look at the modern world. It rewards likability and punishes truth. It tells you to smile, to agree, to hide the sharp edges that make you real. But in doing so, it trains you to live on your knees. You trade influence for comfort, authenticity for acceptance, purpose for validation, and still, they never love you enough. The Machiavellian mind breaks this pattern completely. He stops asking to be liked. He replaces the question, "Do they approve of me?" with "Do they obey my will?" He learns that love is voluntary, but respect can be engineered. That likability invites competition, but fear enforces boundaries. When you give up being liked, a strange thing happens. You become respected. Because people no longer sense need in you. They no longer see someone seeking approval, they see someone who commands it. And even if they resent you, they still move around you carefully. Because hatred is predictable. But the calm indifference of a man who needs nothing, that's terrifying. To be liked is to be dependent. To be respected, feared, or even hated is to be free. And in the pursuit of power, freedom is the only emotion worth keeping. The world teaches you that kindness is strength. That if you're good, patient, and fair, people will return that goodness. But Machiavelli knew better. He saw that kindness, when unguarded, becomes the leash around a man's neck. Because kindness creates expectation, and expectation creates control. The more you give without boundaries, the more people believe they're entitled to take. And when you finally resist, when you finally draw a line, they don't thank you for your generosity. They hate you for the limits. This is the curse of the good man. He believes he's loved for his virtue, when in truth, he's tolerated for his usefulness. The moment he stops serving others' comfort, their affection vanishes. The same mouths that once praised him will twist to condemn him, not because he changed, but because he stopped being convenient. Machiavelli saw this truth in the courts of Florence. He watched noblemen destroyed by their own decency. They believed mercy would buy loyalty. They believed fairness would buy peace. But in politics, mercy without strength is an invitation to betrayal, and fairness without authority is an illusion. He understood that good men are easy to manipulate because they fear being seen as cruel. Every manipulator, every opportunist, every false friend knows this. Appeal to a good man's conscience, and you control him. Make him believe he owes you something, and he will obey you. Make him feel guilty for saying no, and he will serve you. In the name of kindness, he will chain himself. The Machiavellian mind rejects this completely. He knows that kindness has value only when it's a choice, not a habit. He gives, but never out of guilt. He forgives, but never forgets. He helps, but never at the cost of his own command. His kindness is deliberate, a tool of influence, not a debt of morality. He understands the paradox. When you stop needing to be seen as good, you can finally do what is necessary. When you stop trying to protect everyone's feelings, you can finally protect your position. When you stop trying to be loved, you can finally be respected. People often mistake cruelty for power, but Machiavelli saw that cruelty is only useful when it serves order. Uncontrolled cruelty is barbarism. Calculated cruelty is discipline, and the world respects discipline far more than sentiment. To stay kind in a cruel world is not wrong, but to stay kind without strategy is suicide. Every ruler who tried to win through love alone was devoured by those he tried to save. Every leader who chose peace over power discovered that peace only lasts until someone stronger decides otherwise. The good man dies for ideals. The wise man survives by understanding them. So, learn this. Be kind when it's advantageous. Be merciful when it strengthens your position. But never, ever let kindness become your weakness. Because once people realize that your compassion can be used against you, they will. And they will call it justice. Fear is not cruelty. It is clarity. It is the understanding that men obey not because they love authority, but because they fear the cost of disobedience. Machiavelli never worshipped fear for its own sake. He valued it as the most reliable foundation of order. Love depends on mood. Fear depends on memory. And memory, once marked by consequence, does not fade. The man who chooses to be loved walks a fragile path. He must constantly feed the affection of others through compromise, apology, and self-sacrifice. The man who chooses to be feared walks on stone. He moves slowly, deliberately, knowing that his stability comes not from affection, but from respect mixed with caution. The loved man is expected to please. The feared man is expected to win. And the world always aligns itself behind the one who wins. Machiavelli watched this pattern define entire empires. Those who ruled through popularity rose quickly and fell violently. Those who ruled through calculated fear endured. Because fear anchors obedience long after admiration has died. You may stop loving a man who disappoints you, but you will not defy a man who can punish you. This is not cynicism, it is realism. People are not inherently loyal. They are self-interested, emotional, and inconsistent. Love bends with the weather. Fear survives every season. But to use fear properly, you must understand its law. Fear without respect breeds rebellion. Fear with respect breeds order. If you use fear to humiliate, you create enemies. If you use fear to enforce clarity, you create stability. A ruler must never be cruel for pleasure. He must be firm for purpose. Modern men misunderstand this completely. They think being feared means being aggressive, loud, or intimidating. But true fear is quiet. It lives in discipline, not chaos. It's the calm certainty that you will not tolerate disrespect, disobedience, or manipulation. The man who radiates that calm, who punishes without anger and rewards without emotion, creates an aura that others instinctively obey. That is what Machiavelli called the aura of necessity. When your actions feel inevitable, people stop questioning them. They submit, not because they must, but because resisting you feels unnatural. To be feared is to be trusted in a darker, deeper way. They may not like you, but they will follow you. They may resent you, but they will depend on you. Because fear creates structure, and structure creates peace. When people know that boundaries exist, they relax. When they know that consequence is real, they behave. This is the paradox. The feared man brings more order, more justice, and more peace than the loved man ever could. So, stop trying to be liked. Stop begging for agreement. Stop softening your edges for approval. When you carry yourself with authority, the weak will call it arrogance, but the wise will call it certainty. And when you are feared for your strength rather than loved for your submission, you will finally understand what Machiavelli meant by power. Not control over others' emotions, but control over your own image. Because the man who commands fear commands permanence. And permanence is the only form of safety worth having. Hatred is not a curse. It's a mirror. It shows you how much influence you truly hold. The powerless are not hated, they're ignored. Only those who disturb the balance of comfort earn hostility. Machiavelli understood this better than any philosopher before or after him. He saw that hatred was not a sign of failure, but of presence. If you live without opposition, it's because you've done nothing worth noticing. You've disturbed no one, challenged no system, threatened no comfort, and that is the surest proof that your existence carries no weight. Every great man in history was hated before he was respected. Every reformer, every conqueror, every thinker who shifted the world first faced venom, not praise. Because people hate what exposes them. They hate what forces them to see themselves differently. They hate what refuses to bend to their illusions. To be hated is to be seen clearly. It means your presence forces others to confront something they would rather avoid: envy, inadequacy, fear. The mediocrity in them resents the excellence in you. The weakness in them resents your discipline. The cowardice in them resents your certainty. And so they turn their discomfort into contempt, pretending that their hatred is moral when it's only personal. The Machiavellian mind does not fight hatred, he studies it. He knows that emotion reveals dependency. When someone hates you, they've already admitted your power over their peace. They've confessed that your existence moves them, that you are the gravitational center of their attention, no matter how much they pretend otherwise. Hatred is never pure. It's always mixed with fascination. Even your enemies will watch you closely, imitating what they condemn. They'll talk about you endlessly, obsessed with your downfall, because deep down, they need you to define themselves. Without someone to hate, their lives would lose structure. And that is the secret. Hatred is proof of relevance. Machiavelli warned rulers never to be universally loved, because universal love is fragile and false. It disappears the moment you refuse to please. But hatred, properly earned, lasts. It becomes a reputation sharp, durable, unforgettable. People may hate you, but they still calculate their moves around you. They adjust their behavior in your presence. They respect the danger of crossing you, and that respect is worth more than affection ever will be. So, when you feel their contempt smile, it means you've become significant. When they gossip about you, let them. It means your name has weight. When they try to destroy you, understand that they've already failed, because destruction requires acknowledgement, and acknowledgement is power. The hated man, if he remains calm, becomes untouchable. He does not react to insults, because he knows hatred only feeds on reaction. He lets his silence become judgment. His indifference becomes domination. And in that stillness, his enemies burn themselves to ash. The goal is not to be hated for cruelty or arrogance. The goal is to be hated for being unyielding, for refusing to bow, apologize, or conform. To be hated for truth, for strength, for clarity, because that kind of hatred purifies your circle, exposes your enemies, and forges your reputation in fire. The loved man is easily forgotten. The hated man is remembered forever. And in the end, it is not love that builds legacy, it is resistance. Familiarity breeds comfort. Comfort breeds weakness. And weakness breeds contempt. Machiavelli warned rulers of this centuries ago, never make yourself too familiar. Because when people think they understand you, they stop respecting you. When they see you too often, they stop fearing you. When they know your thoughts too easily, they stop valuing your words. Power dies not in defeat but in exposure. The man who wants to be loved surrounds himself with everyone. He shares everything, his plans, his doubts, his emotions, believing openness builds connection. But openness is an invitation to intrusion. The more you reveal, the more they consume. The more they consume, the less they respect. Because mystery is the oxygen of authority. Without distance, you suffocate in the expectations of others. The Machiavellian mind understands that proximity kills perception. He knows that power depends on contrast, the visible difference between the ruler and the ruled, the leader and the led. He uses distance the way a painter uses shadow, not to hide, but to define shape. To create awe, you must be seen less often, and on your own terms. Your silence must make people wonder. Your absence must feel like punishment. Look at every great leader, every figure who commanded respect. They did not belong to the crowd. They stood slightly apart, visible, but unreachable. Their words were scarce. Their attention was earned. Their presence was rare enough to feel sacred, and that distance turned ordinary gestures into symbols. When they spoke, people listened not just to their words, but to the silence that followed them. You can't be powerful if you're always available. You can't be respected if you're always explaining yourself. You can't be followed if you're always walking beside everyone else. People admire what they cannot fully touch. They follow what they cannot easily possess. Machiavelli called this the art of necessary distance. The prince must be close enough to understand his people, but far enough that they never forget who he is. Too much distance breeds rebellion, too little breeds irreverence. You must strike balance, know them, but remain unknowable. Let them see you, but never too clearly. In the modern world, distance is more powerful than ever. Everyone exposes everything. They share their thoughts, their emotions, their weaknesses for attention. But the man who resists this, the one who holds back, becomes magnetic. His restraint creates curiosity. His silence creates speculation. His mystery becomes myth. Distance is not loneliness. It is architecture. It builds height around your image. It reminds the world that your time, your energy, your presence are rare resources, and rarity always breeds value. So withdraw from the noise. Let others overshare and over-explain. You remain quiet, deliberate, selective. Your attention becomes a prize, your approval a currency. Because once you master distance, people will speak your name even when you're not there. They will imagine what you're thinking, what you're planning, where you are, and that imagination will work harder for your reputation than your presence ever could. The man who can step back without losing influence is the man who never truly leaves the room. Every powerful man needs an enemy. not because he loves conflict, but because hatred organizes chaos. It gives the crowd something to aim at that isn't him. Machiavelli understood this better than anyone. If people must hate, guide their hatred. If they must blame, give them someone to blame. If they must burn, hand them a torch, but never let them choose where it falls. The naive ruler wants to be loved by all. He works endlessly to please everyone, to satisfy every faction, to offend no one. And for that effort, he earns nothing but suspicion, because the crowd doesn't trust the man who agrees with everyone. They don't believe the one who never takes sides. They love fairness, in theory, but in practice, they crave division. They need villains to define their heroes. They need conflict to justify their loyalties. The Machiavellian mind accepts this law of human nature. People unite through opposition. Without something to hate, they turn on each other. Without someone to blame, they blame their leaders. That's why every wise ruler keeps a scapegoat close, a distraction, a lightning rod for emotion. The enemy becomes the necessary sacrifice for stability. But here is the secret. Sometimes you must become your own scapegoat. Sometimes you must let the crowd hate you, deliberately, strategically, safely. Because hatred, when directed properly, becomes armor. When people project their frustration onto you, they release it. You absorb the tension and stand unmoved, becoming the symbol of power they cannot touch. They hate you, yes, but they also depend on you to hold the structure together. And deep down, they respect the one strong enough to bear their anger. Machiavelli saw that the wise ruler doesn't waste energy trying to cleanse his image. He lets the people call him cruel, ambitious, manipulative, because while they whisper, he governs. Their hatred keeps them focused outward, away from each other, away from rebellion. It's not morality that holds a nation, it's management of emotion. The same is true in every smaller arena of life. Your work, your relationships, your ambitions. If you are doing anything significant, someone will need you to be the villain in their story. Let them. The fool fights to change every opinion. The wise man chooses which lies are useful. He knows that sometimes a clean reputation is a fragile one, easily stained. But a reputation already marked by controversy becomes untouchable. It cannot be ruined further. It can only be feared. You must decide what kind of peace you want, the fragile peace of being liked, or the durable order of being understood. The first demands obedience to others. The second demands mastery over perception. Hatred, when accepted, becomes a shield. You stop fearing slander because you've already lived through it. You stop defending yourself because defense implies guilt. You stop explaining because power never explains, it defines. So, when the world turns against you, do not beg for its forgiveness. Let them hate. Let them talk. Let them scream your name with venom. Each word they speak keeps you alive in their minds. And as long as they cannot ignore you, you remain powerful. Because hatred, properly directed, is not destruction. It's recognition. And the man they hate today is the man they will follow tomorrow once they need his strength again. The greatest prison is built from opinions. Not laws, not walls, not chains. Opinions. The fear of them, the need for them, the obsession with how others see you. That's what keeps most men small. Machiavelli saw it clearly. The desire to be admired is the surest path to control. Because the moment you care how others perceive you, you begin to serve their perception. You adjust your words, your tone, your choices, all to protect an image that doesn't even belong to you. You become a servant of approval, and you call it strategy. But it's not strategy, it's dependence. The Machiavellian mind does not play that game. He builds a fortress so strong that no opinion, praise, or insult can breach it. He understands that the world will always misjudge the man it cannot manipulate. So he stops correcting, stops explaining, stops defending. He lets misunderstanding become armor. Because indifference is not apathy. It is dominance. When no one can use their words to move you, they lose control. When you no longer crave validation, every manipulator loses leverage. And when you no longer react to criticism, your silence becomes judgment. People begin to measure their own worth by your lack of response. Machiavelli advised rulers to cultivate reputation, not for vanity, but for utility. He said reputation should be used, never served. You shape it when it serves power, and ignore it when it threatens your peace. The weak spend their lives maintaining an image. The strong spend their lives building reality. Learn this distinction. When people talk about you, they reveal themselves, not you. Their admiration exposes what they envy. Their hatred exposes what they fear. Their silence exposes what they cannot understand. And once you see that, opinions lose their sting. Indifference is not pretending not to care. It's understanding why you shouldn't. The calmest men are not emotionless. They are immune. They don't fight the storm of judgment. They stand above it. Because they know that no opinion, no rumor, no insult can touch the man who defines himself. In the modern world, the need for approval has become an epidemic. People build their lives on attention, likes, praise, validation. They call it connection, but it's addiction. They mistake visibility for value. And in chasing relevance, they lose reality. You must do the opposite. You must detach. You must learn to disappear from the eyes of others until your value speaks for itself. When you stop chasing validation, it begins to chase you. When you stop explaining, your silence becomes mysterious. When you stop needing to be understood, you become unshakable. That is the fortress of indifference, a state of mind so disciplined that external noise becomes meaningless, a level of composure so complete that judgment feels like wind against stone. Do not try to silence the world. Let it shout. Let it argue. Let it project its opinions like arrows. You don't need to dodge them, you just need to stand still. Because when you remain unmoved, you teach the world a truth it never forgets. No one can control a man who does not need to be liked, and no one can destroy a man who does not fear being hated. The final step toward freedom is indifference to being loved. Because the man who no longer needs affection cannot be controlled by it. Machiavelli understood this truth early. He saw rulers beg for approval, only to become prisoners of it. They softened their strength to stay admired, and in doing so, lost both love and power. The crowd's affection is a storm. It comes fast, fades faster, and obeys no master. The wise man stops chasing it. To be hated for truth is better than to be loved for weakness. Because hatred, when earned through strength, is cleaner than false praise. It means you have made a mark. It means your presence disturbs the fragile and exposes the cowardly. And nothing threatens mediocrity more than a man who doesn't beg to be liked. When you reach that point, you stop asking, "Why do they hate me?" You start asking, "What does their hatred reveal?" You begin to see that contempt is proof of relevance. No one hates the insignificant. Machiavelli never taught men to seek hatred, but to survive it, to wear it as proof that you have risen beyond dependency. Because once you no longer need love, every form of manipulation dies. Flattery fails, insults fail. You become the rarest thing in the modern world, unmoved. Hatred clarifies who you are and who never deserved access to you. It purges weakness from your circle and illusion from your identity. And once you have endured it without bending, you discover something extraordinary. The noise of the crowd fades. The opinions vanish. And in that silence, you hear only one voice, your own. That is the final Machiavellian victory. To no longer chase approval, to no longer fear rejection, to walk through love and hatred alike with the same calm expression, and to know that indifference, not affection, is the true mark of power. Because the man who no longer needs to be loved has already conquered himself, and a man who commands himself cannot be ruled by anyone.